Good day folks, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be discussing about the fluid mosaic model of cell membrane. The plasma membrane or the cell membrane separates the cell from the external environment. Now let's see the fluid mosaic model of the plasma membrane. The lipid bilayer was originally proposed by Davison and Daniel in 1935. Later, the structure of the biomembranes was described as fluid mosaic model by Zinker and Nicholson in 1972. The phospholipids are arranged in bilayers with the polar head groups oriented towards the extracellular side and the cytoplasmic side with a hydrophobic core. The distribution of the phospholipids is such that the choline-containing phospholipids are mainly in the external layer and the ethanolamine and serine-containing phospholipids are in the inner layer. As is evident from the figure, these are the polar head and these are the non-polar tails. Now to talk about the factors affecting the fluidity of the membrane. The fluidity of the membrane is maintained by the length of the hydrocarbon chain, degree of unsaturation, and the nature of polar head groups. Temperature also plays an important role. The temperature at which the membrane changes from the solid gel to the fluid state is called the transition temperature or TM. The cholesterol molecules which are present between the hydrophobic tails also plays an important role in maintaining the fluidity of the cell membrane. When cholesterol concentration increases, the membrane becomes less fluid on the outer surface but more fluid in the hydrophobic core. The effect of cholesterol on membrane fluidity is different at different temperatures. At temperature below the Tm, cholesterol increases fluidity and there be increase in permeability of the membrane. At temperatures above the Tm, cholesterol decreases the fluidity of the membrane. In spur cell anemia and alcoholic cirrhosis, membrane studies have revealed the role of excess cholesterol. The decrease in membrane fluidity may affect the activities of receptors and ion channels. This has been implicated in conditions like LCAT deficiency, that is lecithin cholesterol acyltransferase deficiency, Alzheimer's disease, and hypertension. This is the diagrammatic representation of a choline-containing membrane lipid. Here the fatty acid forms the hydrophobic tail and the glycerol, phosphate and choline in the case of external layer of the cell membrane forms the head, whereas if it is the internal layer it is formed by ethanolamine except for choline. Now this is a schematic representation of the membrane proteins in the cell membrane. There are two types of proteins which are present on the cell membrane, and these are the integral protein and the peripheral proteins. Now integral proteins, they are transmembrane proteins. They span the entire length of the cell membrane. They can form ion channels, pumps, show antigenic functions and various other properties as well. The peripheral proteins are of two types, that is intrinsic or the inner membrane protein and the extrinsic or the outer membrane protein. The intrinsic proteins are present on the inner surface of the cell membrane, that is towards the cytoplasm, whereas the outer membrane proteins are facing the extracellular matrix or outside the cell. The intrinsic proteins act as enzymes or anchor proteins, whereas the extrinsic proteins mostly act as cell adhesion molecules. Now moving on to the functions of the lipid bilayer. The main function of the lipid bilayer of a cell membrane is to create a permeability barrier between the interstitial fluid, that is the ECM or the extracellular matrix, and the cytoplasm, that is inner components of the cell. Now the permeability of a substance depends on whether it is lipid soluble or water soluble. Now in the case of lipid soluble substances like oxygen and alcohol, they can pass easily through the cell membrane. Whereas water soluble substances like urea, glucose, they cannot pass easily. So thus lipid bilayer makes the membrane semi-permeable. That's it for the video. If you honestly did understand the topic, do like, share and subscribe. Thank you.